Yo, what's up, guys? Today I'm going to be doing a video on my top 10 albums of 2022. I know a lot of them were probably pretty apparent with my Spotify Wrapped, but I kind of wanted to get more into detail as to what I was listening to this year in two parts. One being what I've been listening to that released in 2022, and the other part being things that I've just been listening to. Didn't necessarily have to come out in 2022. I just feel like my Spotify Wrapped didn't really do my music taste justice, and rather than just screen recording my likes and going through everything in my Spotify, I figured I'd make an organized list to everything that's really taken over my year. Alright, so getting into my top releases of 2022, I want to start from 10 and work my way up to number 1. So I'm going to start with the lowest, starting with 10, which is Learn to Swim by Red Veil. I remember being in Nebraska whenever this album dropped, and I listened to it all day on repeat because I was just so blown away. I was late to his first album, Niagara, but I did hear about it whenever the vinyl released through one of my friends, so I got the vinyl, listened to the album, and I was super impressed. Red Veil is doing some amazing things at such a young age, and some of my favorite tracks include Together, Diving Board, PG Baby. The remix with Denzel Curry is also really good. That released significantly later than the album. But Shoulder, Better, Sky, Automatic, Home, and then the closing track, Working on It. You're going to notice that a lot of the albums that I have listed, a lot of my favorite tracks are just most of the album, because why would they not be if they're not, in my top albums this year? Alright, number 9, Ramona Park Broke My Heart by Vince Staples. This is the kind of album, to me, where you see the cover art and you're just instantly like, oh, I need to listen to that project. I did that whenever it came out. I wasn't really super huge into Vince Staples before that, but I listened through this album. I was super impressed. Some of my favorite tracks are Player Ways, Magic, Free the Homies, DJ Quick, and When Sparks Fly. I'm surprised When Sparks Fly wasn't higher in my Spotify Wrapped video, if you guys saw that. It was in my playlist, my top songs of the year, but it wasn't within my top 5, and I'm kind of surprised by that. So my number 8, and while it pains me to put it this low, it's going to have to be Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick is just that kind of artist where when he drops an album, everybody has to listen to it. He's an incredibly talented rapper, probably one of the best of all time, maybe, definitely of my generation. Kendrick was the first artist I ever listened to on Spotify back in 2015. Fun fact. But there's not been a lack of love for this project from me. I just have a lot of things that I feel like I should put over it because I just frankly enjoyed them more. But yeah, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, incredible project. Some of my favorite tracks include United in Grief, N95, Die Hard, Father Time, We Cry Together, Purple Heart, Silent Hill, Auntie Diaries, and Mirror. A lot of these songs are just incredibly written because that's what Kendrick Lamar does, but he also manages to make it sound amazing. So yeah, I mean, I was very impressed by this project. It pains me to put it slow, but like I said before, a lot of the stuff kind of just were things that I just enjoyed more as a project. And Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest artists of all time, so I'll give him his flowers, but we're gonna have to move on to the rest of the list. Number 7, we have Preacher's Daughter by Ethel Cain. I didn't know who Ethel Cain was before this album, but I remember seeing it on YouTube, and it came up in my recommended, and I was really impressed whenever I listened to it. I know the lead single for this album was American Teenager, but I didn't listen to Ethel Cain whenever that came out. So after doing some more research and familiarizing myself with Ethel Cain's history, I understand the album a lot better. And some of my favorite tracks on this project were American Teenager, Western Nights, Thoroughfare, Sun-Bleached Flies, Hard Time, and Strangers is the closer. That's an incredible outro for this album. I feel like it kind of ties it together. It's like a period at the end of the sentence. I think it's perfect. I loved a lot of the songs on this project, and I think Ethel Cain did great with this one. So yeah, Ethel Cain at number 7. Preacher's Daughter. At number 6, we have Melt My Eyes, See Your Future by Denzel Curry. This album came out the day before my birthday, and I was so happy when it did. I think this is easily Denzel's best project. A lot of my favorite songs on here is starting with Melt Session number 1, the intro, Worst Comes to Worst, X-Wing, Troubles, Angels, Zatoichi, The Ills, Chrome Hearts. I know that's on the deluxe, but I'm counting it anyway. And a lot of the songs on the deluxe were like these jazzy kind of like remastered versions of the song, and I loved it. I was very impressed. I didn't think that I needed a Denzel Curry project like that, but he's such a versatile artist, and for him to be able to do something like that after making such an incredible album, making the deluxe um, even better, maybe not even better, but making the deluxe just as good in like a completely different way is very impressive for an artist to do. And I think Melt My Eyes See Your Future, easily one of my favorite projects of this year. So at number 5, I have You Can't Kill Me by 070 Shake. I didn't know that 070 Shake was on Ghost Town until after I found this album, because I just never really like looked into it like that. But this album's phenomenal. I remember listening to it for the first time with my friends. We were all hanging out and we listened to this album, and every single one of us loved it. If you haven't listened to this album, I think you definitely should. There's not a whole lot wrong with it, from my perspective at least, just from like just sonically. And I mean, as far as replayability goes, this album has everything. Some of my favorite tracks on this are Web, Invited, History, Skin and Bones, Wine and Spirits is probably my favorite, and Stay. I think that song is incredible. At number 4, I'm going to put The Forever Story by JID. I think this album kind of does itself justice. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this project. I think this album's phenomenal. A lot of you guys have probably already listened to it because it's received a lot of praise, and rightfully so. The tracks on this project do it justice, and I think JID, as a rapper and singer, is probably the best at what he does. I would do anything to just get a full album full of JID singing like acoustic versions of songs. He has such an incredible voice, and I don't think he's really matched whenever it comes to like a rapper who's as skilled at singing as he is at rapping. A lot of my favorite tracks on this project include Radar, Dance Now, the lead single, Surround Sound, another lead single with 21 Savage, System M, Money. I think that song has such an infectious chorus, and I could listen to that all day and probably not get bored of it. Better Days and Louder Too also kind of close up the project there. I've been high on JID for a while, and I'm happy that he dropped an album that received as much praise as he did because I think he's so deserving of it. At number 3, I'm going to have to put Crest by Blade and Echo 2K. If you watched my Spotify rap video, you probably saw that I was a little addicted to this album, I will admit. A lot of the songs on this project kind of just do their thing. I just want to get up and dance to them and act like nobody's watching me. I could listen to this album. I mean, I did listen to this album constantly all year, so I don't think I need to say that. At number 2, we have Ants From Up There by Black Country New Road. This probably would have been my album of the year if my number 1 didn't come out. This album is incredible. It's so emotionally charged. It's beautifully written. The vocals are like perfect for the kind of like portrait they're trying to paint. Now, some of my favorite tracks on this album are Chaos Space Marine, which was actually in my bio for Instagram because I didn't know what to put there, and I just love that song, so I just threw it in my bio for some reason. Concord, Bread Song, that's probably my favorite song on the album if it's not the place where he inserted the blade. I'm going to say Haldern, Snow Globes, and Basketball Shoes for the outro. I can't give this album enough praise. I was happy to see that Fantano rated it highly, and like I said, if my number 1 didn't come out, this would have been my number 1. But yeah, Black Country New Roads crushed it out of the park. Ants From Up There is a phenomenal album, and if you're trying to get a little cry session going, definitely listen to it. So before I do my number 1, I'm gonna slide in some honorable mentions real quick. Just quickly, I'm not gonna go over some of my favorite tracks unless I feel it's necessary. But I think Snot released a great project with Ethereal. Roadrunner by Brockhampton. Obviously, Post Malone dropped this year with 12 Karat Toothache, and one of my top songs this year was When I'm Alone. And I mean, the album is just as good, but I think that track outshines everything else on the project. And finally, Smithereens by Joji. I was very happy to see that he dropped this year. And when I know he announced the project significantly earlier than he planned on dropping it. I forget what month he announced it, but it was a few months until the drop, and like the pressure was killing me because I was so excited to receive another Joji project. I'm very high on him as an artist. So for my number one, if you know, you know. It's I Didn't Mean to Haunt You by Quadeca. Um, I am not even going to list my favorite tracks on this project because there's not a song on this album that I would skip. I think it's incredible. It's beautifully written. It's produced well. And it's so crazy that he pretty much did it all himself. There's a lot here to analyze throughout the project. I've done my fair share of going on Genius and annotating things and looking at what other people have wrote. There's just a lot going on. And I think every bar in this album means something to like develop the theme. And there's not a lot of albums that are capable of doing something like that. I just think that this is probably easily the best album that's come out this year. I've watched YouTube videos on it explaining it. There's not really like enough that I can say to just prove to you how much this album like intrigues me and how I feel like maybe everybody should be giving this project as much praise as I am. I can't really say a whole lot to do this album justice. There's just so much going on, and if you haven't listened to this project, please, please, please go out and listen to it. It's phenomenal. I was a fan of Quadeca as a content creator, just like as a YouTuber, and seeing him like blossom into such an incredible artist like blows my mind because I remember being impressed when Voice Memos came out, and I mean that was what 2019 or something. And I remember just like being in high school listening to his stuff and thinking that like he was like crazy because he could rap fast and stuff. As Quadeca developed as an artist and my music taste kind of blossomed as well, I feel like he kind of took me along with him on the ride. So maybe it comes from a more sentimental place, but I'm definitely not the only person that's calling this album of the year. This list is entirely subjective, so whatever you feel like you should be listening to or placing, drop it in the comments. Let me know if you think that something outshined another thing on this project, or if I left something off that maybe I should listen to. Moving on to part 2 of this video, I kind of wanted to just like talk about some things that weren't really brought up on my Spotify Wrapped that I was definitely bumping like a ton of this year. It didn't necessarily have to come out in 2022, which is why I'm kind of doing it separate from the rest of the list, as I'm sure you guys could understand. And before I start the list, I kind of just want to say I wanted to leave the obvious stuff off of this because I don't think anybody would be surprised that I was listening to Views by Drake. So I wanted to kind of keep it to things that like I feel like weren't given enough praise as projects, or things that just kind of took over my year that weren't in my Spotify Wrapped. Now I'm gonna do this quickly, not really for any specific reason, but a lot of these things are just older, so you might know them. I probably don't need to like analyze them for you. And there's no particular order, but I'm gonna say the new Abnormal by The Strokes, 1000 gecs by 100 gecs. It's just an album that I listen to a ton of with my friends. Coming Home by Falling in Reverse. I know that's probably a curveball from the rest of my list, but I really can't get enough of that album. I know it's been out for a few years now, and I've been listening to a ton of it, and I always have since it came out. I listened to a ton of MGMT this year. Not really their self-titled album as much, but with Oracular Spectacular, Congratulations, and Little Dark Age. MGMT doesn't have a whole lot that sounds like them, so I'm glad that I was kind of able to like learn more about their stuff beyond just Electric Feel, Kids, and Time to Pretend. And this isn't necessarily a project, but I listened to a ton of AG Club this year. I think this is kind of like a really good breakout year for them, kind of putting themselves onto the scene. They toured with Denzel Curry. They dropped 3 albums, I believe. Maybe 2. But they did great, and I bumped a ton of their stuff this year. Okay, so my camera died, so if the camera angle is any different, it's gonna die again. What the Okay, note to self, always check your camera batteries before you put it back on the tripod. So yeah, if the camera angle looks any different, you know why. My camera died twice. So I think I left off with Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. So I'm sure if you've listened to Punisher, which a lot of you probably have, you would probably understand that it's mainly something that I listen to whenever I'm upset. But I'll still give that album a lot of credit because it's very well written. So the 2 coming up that might be obvious are Damn by Kendrick Lamar and An Evening with Silk Sonic, obviously by Silk Sonic. Damn to me is Kendrick Lamar's best project. Maybe not objectively, but it definitely is my favorite. A lot of my favorite Kendrick songs are on this project. So naturally I was bumping it all year. and then An Evening with Silk Sonic. If you haven't somehow listened to this album, definitely go and do that. I am kind of at a loss for words with how good this album is, and every time I listen to it, I think I appreciate it just a little more. And then finally, this is my last thing that's going to be on this list, was Outer Peace by Toro y Moi. Definitely something that just barely squeaked its way onto this list, and it might be part of like a recency bias, but I just love the sound of it. There's not a whole lot on my playlist that sounds like Outer Peace. 50/50 was really high in my Spotify Wrapped, and if I didn't discover this project after they stopped tracking, it probably also would have been in my most listened to artists, just because I feel like I would have listened to this album a ton throughout the year. But I think that's gonna be it for the two lists that I had prepared for you guys today. Like I said earlier, I just kind of wanted to give you guys like a closer look at to what I was listening to this year, because I feel like my Spotify Wrapped didn't do like a lot of it justice for the stuff that I was mainly bumping like near the end of the year, or just things that I listened to and I loved as projects but didn't listen to a ton of like consistently throughout the year. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll try to make another video soon.